one forces you to take a job, it's privilege. That's what it is, privilege.
Okay. All right.
You missed the boat on that one.
Yeah.
You don't think it's privilege.
No, no.
You just think it was an honest mistake.
I think it was an honest mistake.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you know what?
If anything, the
Fox
black
made an
dowel,
honest mistake
if
too.
anything, the black dowel should be cheaper than the white dowel.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
right.
Exactly. And that is the point. That is exactly my point. That is the point.
I mean, I really don't. Do you buy dolls, Anselm? Have you ever bought them?
No.
Your daughter never played with dolls?
Not that I can remember.
I guess we all try to forget all that old stuff from way back in the day.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? And I guess you didn't get dolls.
Who?
Yeah. Do you think it's necessary for black children to get black dolls?
Yeah.
Why?
Just as how it's necessary for you to have black role models, just as how it's necessary for white kids to have white role models, just as anyhow it's necessary, for black kids to see people in prestigious positions. It's the same thing. You know the study they did with the white dolls and the black dolls?
Yeah.
Whenever they look at the white dolls, they think something is excellent. When they look at the black dolls, they think of something bad. You know about that experiment, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so.
So you're going to, and what if the child says, I don't want a black doll, I want a white doll?
Because of the problem. Because of that same problem.
Would you say, I'm sorry,
you got to have a black
little
doll.
Cindy, you can't get a white doll?
No, you can't.
Okay.
What's wrong with that?
I didn't say anything was wrong with it.
Okay. But that's what, I mean, is a white kid going to say, I want a black doll?
I've heard of some white kids who did want black dolls, yeah.
Okay. I mean,
I did one teacher who kept saying, my daughter, this is her doll, and nobody understands why, but that was the one she preferred.
That's fine, too.
Yeah.
I
think that's an anomaly. I don't think that's.
You see, but what it is is that from a self, how you want to put it, from a self-actualization perspective of self, confidence in self, being confident you can do a lot of things, you can achieve a lot of things, that's why you want that sort of reality rather than a misconception or a misperception. And that's why you want to give. That's why it's like in Trinidad and Tobago, they never told us anything about black history. We didn't know about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey.
You didn't learn about American history.
No, we learned about English history. We learned about Sir Francis Drake. You
didn't learn about the history of Trinidad?
Very rarely. Some of it. But most of the time was English history. Sir Walter Raleigh, Sir Francis Drake, all these, plunderers and murderers and rapists. That's what they taught us. It wasn't until I came to the United States of America.
Let me ask you this. When you learned about those people, did you think of them as plunderers and murderers?
Back then, no.
Or did you see them as heroes?
I see them as heroes.
Because that's what you were taught today.
Because that's how they taught us. That Sir Walter Raleigh and Columbus came to Trinidad in 1492 and he discovered Trinidad and Tobago, and there were Caribs and Arawaks. Those are the Indians that he separated. He made some into Carib and made some into Arawaks. One was violent and one was peaceful. I didn't learn that until I got older.
You didn't learn what?
That Columbus was a rapist, a plunderer. He came and steal everything on the land. There was people there before him. That's what they taught us. He had the Pinta, the Nina, and the Santa Maria.
That's what you were told.
Yeah.
You remember that part.
Yeah, very vividly. Man, Columbus was a great man. That's what they taught us. They didn't tell us about the history. I mean, we became independent in 1962, August 31st, 1962. But if you was to ask me, did it teach me when Trinidad and Tobago came into existence? Nah.
Were there like great people who fought for the independence of Trinidad?
Yeah, yeah.
Who were those people?
Dr. Eric Williams.
Eric?
Yeah, Dr. Eric Williams. Mm-hmm. He was the first Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay. Is he black or Indian?
Black. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot they didn't teach us. So you the name of this guy.
Do you think they're teaching people that now?
What?
In Trinidad?
I think things are much better now. Let me teach you some black history.
Well, just the history of the island.
Oh, history of I think they will teach you that now. I'm not sure, but I think they will. But they never told us any black history. There's none. Absolutely zero.
You knew there was slavery there, right?
Yeah, slavery, but I mean, you know that from cursory. They didn't even give you much of that. You know, we talk about
when did slavery end in Trinidad?
I don't know. I really don't know. When did slavery end in America?
In 1865.
1865? I don't know. They didn't teach us that. At least in the classes I went, they didn't teach us that.
Oh, and you still don't know?
Still don't know.
Do you want me to look it up for you, honey?
That's all right.
Got me feeling all sorry for you and stuff. Dang, maybe it's still happening. You don't even know. Come on, man.
So here's the guy.
What, they did tell you how the Indians got over there?
No, they just told us that Columbus came in 1492.
But they didn't tell you how the Indians got over there.
No, they didn't tell us all of that.
How the Chinese got there.
Chinese. There's no Chinese when Columbus came.
But how Trinidad became populated by Chinese and Indians?
They came from China and they came from India.
But why?
I mean, they're looking for a better place.
No.
Yeah.
That's not how that happened.
How did it happen?
The British had colonies, right, all over the place. Mm-hmm. And every place that they had a small piece of China. And, of course, they had India. And so that they brought the Africans over there to work, I guess, on sugarcane plantations. And then they brought the Indians over there to administer the affairs. They brought Irish people over into the Caribbean and enslaved them first. And then they brought the Africans over. So they brought a lot of Irish people into Barbados and Montserrat and Jamaica. And then they brought African men over, and they made a lot of efforts. These are the British to mix the Irish, because the Irish were the first people that they colonized. And then they brought the Indians over to run their, managerial affairs for them. And the Chinese, they had something that they sort of called the pig trade, and they captured Chinese people and brought them over to the islands also. And that's why you have that mixture of all those different groups there and in Guyana and Jamaica. They went from island to island and had these huge plantations of sugar and indigo and, transported those raw materials back to England and made those colonies that they had dependent on them. And so you're saying that these colonies existed until 1962? So they were a colony of England.
Right, we became independent on August 31st, 1962. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's when
of course that you would learn their history and I guess there would still be remnants of that. It's not like I've studied, but this is just the general history of the Caribbean. My father's father is from Barbados, but I don't, have any, I just carry that name with me. I've, investigated these things. I was just reading about Irish, how the British really mistreated the Irish. They starved those people out. Not only their potato famine, but they enslaved them first.
The British were wicked, The
British was something else, man.
They were some wicked people, man. And the sad thing is that...
But all of them did that. I don't think...
All of them like who? Spain and France?
Spain and France.
Yeah, but they weren't as bad as the...
I think of all of them... No, I think that the British... and imperialism is like my favorite thing to think about, even though it's like one of the worst things to happen. But... because it explains how we all got here, and how we got to be the way we are and take on these thoughts and ideas of these other people that brought us here to the Americas. But among them all, I think that the Spaniards, the Portuguese started this, and then the Spaniards perfected it. I mean, as far as the enslavement of people. But the British profited the most.
Immensely.
Because they were all over the world. And then their ability to create these totally new places like Trinidad and Jamaica and all these islands. And, you know, the French were equally as bad. So when you look at the Antilles and how it's sliced up.
Yeah, the French have their own Guadeloupe and all that.
Yeah, so if you look at it on a map, it'll look like French, British Island, French, British Island, French, British Island. And you see a map, they just carved up stuff like that.
And they like kicked out Spain, man.
Yeah.
They had to like be.
Well, the United States did the worst. And then so when the Spaniards, when all the colonies in Spain and South and Central America finally became free in like the late 1800s, then the United States stepped in and says, okay, now we've got this Monroe Doctrine and no other European countries can come and colonize South America. And so now the United States steps in and starts colonizing South America in its own way. So whenever the people of South America, you know, voted on, you know, democratically put in somebody who wanted to, you know, make life a little bit more equitable, the United States would overthrow those governments.
Now, there's this article in today's Washington Post. The blame game over. Police deaths in New York goes too far. Patrick Lynch, president of the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association, arrived at a makeshift memorial on Monday, December the 22nd, near the site where the New York Police Department officers Rafael Ramos and Wenjan Liu were murdered in Brooklyn Borough. The cold-blooded killings of two New York City police officers Saturday was a terrible, vicious crime. It also had the occasion for some wrong-headed commentary that needs correcting. Now this is... 1 minute. This always happens. Oh, God.
You're having technical difficulties today.
Yes, there seem to be a lot of technical difficulties today, but that normally happens.
These things happen, Ansel.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Ishmael Brinsley, a disturbed New York native with a history of 20 arrests, at least 20 arrests, assassinated officers Rafael Ramos and Wenjan Liu as they sat in the patrol car in Brooklyn. Officer Ramos, 40, was a well-liked, devoted policeman who looked forward to taking his two boys to play basketball in the park whenever he could. Officer Liu, 32, had celebrated his wedding just 3 months ago. I know that being a cop is dangerous, but I must do it, he told a friend, as the New York Times reported. If I don't do it, and you don't do it, then who is going to do it? The officers are being mourned and celebrated in New York and across the country, as they should be. But their deaths also have been improperly used in political debate. Republican politicians such as former New York Mayor Rudy W. Giuliani and police union leaders in Baltimore and New York have blamed the killings on people protesting police tactics after civilians were killed by officers in Ferguson, Missouri, Staten Island, and elsewhere. We had 4 months of propaganda, starting with the president. We had 4 months of propaganda, starting with the president, that everybody should hate the police. Juliana said on Fox and Friends Weekend. I don't care how you want to describe it. That's what those protests are all about. Patrick Lynch, a police union leader in New York, agreed. There's blood on many hands tonight, he said late Saturday. Those that incited violence on the street in the guise of protest, that tried to tear down what New York City police officers did every day. We don't doubt that some police officers have felt aggrieved by the protests, nor that a few protesters have gone too far in their vilification, not just of police methods, but of police officers.